Well, good afternoon to you. 306 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, we'll talk to Andrew Arthur from the Center for Immigration Studies. He spent yesterday talking to members of Congress and their staff all across Capitol Hill about our border crisis, what he has learned ahead. And then 4 o'clock from 7 News, WJLA, Nick Minnock is with us. I'm so happy he's joining us. We're going to talk to the reporter about his latest journalism out of Loudoun County, Virginia, where taxpayers are now going to be footing the bill well over $250,000 for the new communications officer for the Loudoun County School Board. Is that a good use of your money? And then Steve Friend is here, the FBI whistleblower. That's at 5 o'clock, reacting to Christopher Wray's testimony today on Capitol Hill. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Man, big explosion in Arlington last night, huh? I see the breaking news now. You just heard our newscast that the man who was inside of that home, 56-year-old James Yu, they said they found human remains. They're sorting through. They're trying to establish it's actually him, but seems likely that it was James Yu, and he is deceased, in case you were wondering. If you saw the explosion, you became immediately convinced that anyone who was inside of that home would be deceased. The whole home just disappeared in a moment as it exploded in Arlington. That was crazy. Isn't that one of the craziest possible things? Just a home. And my first reaction, we'll find out what it is. My first reaction is this had to be a gas explosion, I thought. The whole house just collapsing. Of course, the car alarm's going off. People all over Arlington saying they could feel the blast. I'm not surprised by that. CNN has a piece up this afternoon. Suspect identified as resident of home near Washington, D.C. that exploded as police tried to execute search warrant. They say the suspect inside an Arlington, Virginia home that went up in flames Monday night as police were trying to execute a search warrant has been identified as resident James Yu, 56, and is presumed to be dead. Arlington County Police Chief Andy Penn said. They said human remains, that is, have been located at the scene. The chief medical examiner is looking. The explosion prompted the evacuation of several nearby houses, officials said. Police are investigating the circumstances of the explosion, which tore through the home as law enforcement were trying to make contact with the suspect inside. Authorities believe the man had been firing a flare gun from his home earlier in the day. Arlington County Police Department spokeswoman Ashley Savage said. Officers had responded to reports of shots fired near the home in 800 block of North Burlington Street shortly before 5 p.m. Now, I've been reading some of the coverage of this. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of people saying that they believe that he was firing some sort of gun that fires bullets. I haven't seen anything to support that. All I'm seeing right now is flare gun over and over, that he may have just been firing this flare gun. The police responded to these reports of shots fired shortly before 5 p.m. Police then learned the suspect had discharged the flare gun about 30 to 40 times from his home into the surrounding neighborhood, the police statement said. Quote, during the course of the investigation, officers obtained a search warrant for the suspect's residence. They attempted to make contact with the suspect over the telephone and through loudspeakers. The suspect did not respond and remained barricaded inside the residence. As officers tried to execute the warrant, the suspect fired several rounds from what is believed to have been a firearm, CNN says, inside the home. Sometime afterward, around 8:25 p.m., the home exploded, police said. That's, of course, also when social media exploded with this video showing. So because of the police activity, you had an eyewitness that was already aiming a camera at the home. It looks like from a balcony, a downward angle on the house, some distance away. And just so happened to be filming all of this police activity when the home explodes. In fact, that eyewitness spoke to Fox 5 and had this to say.
Moments before that explosion, and what made you take your phone out?
I mean, things seemed like they were definitely escalating as the guy inside wasn't responding, and they drove a SWAT truck through the front door, and then shots were being fired after that. So it seemed to be escalating, and it was like, okay, something's actually going to happen at this point. It had been a couple hours at that till then. And yeah, I mean, it was just a happenstance. They had pulled back after breaking through the front door, trying to get him to come out. He wasn't coming out.
By the way, this guy's such a bro. If you see the video, he's got like a big smile on his face, like he can't believe what he just saw and captured. Every news outlet in America is asking him for a copy of his footage, and he's totally fine. He should have got some money for it, by the way. I think that would have been better. You see these guys, they capture, can we use this for free? Everybody asks. He's like, yeah, sure.
And they were like relocating and resituating to be able to go through to the front window. And at that time, I mean, the place just erupted, you know.
Literally.
The video is crazy. What's going on through your head? Because you're like holding the camera, trying to record it. Like, what's going on through your head and the people around you? We heard some other voices in the back.
Yeah, the voice in the back was my wife in the back, and then my buddy on the side. And I mean, he was screaming no, you know. I mean, at that point, there's no thought, you know. There's no thought. There's just pure reaction and shock, and it was wild. It was wild to say the least. I mean, you know, for this something like to happen in your neighborhood right down the street, you know, like about to bring a little baby in the world, and you're just like, what, like. You know, you start to question a lot of things at that point. You know?
Yeah, it's pandemonium. You just watched a house melt outside of your own home. He goes on to talk about the flare gun here, and there's some conversation about what type of weapon was used. Now, this guy, I don't know if it's in this clip or in somewhere else, but I did hear him say that it sounded like an AR. It sounded like something high caliber. Well, is it an AR or is it something high caliber? Those are two different things, but he's kind of just shooting off, meaning he heard something and he's trying to tell it to the press.
The SWAT truck through the front door with like a pile driving arm, and at that point, he started firing a weapon back. I mean, I believe it was like an AR. It was a high caliber weapon.
Yeah, same.
It's not a flare. They shot flares at the beginning. He was not shooting flares near the end.
Okay, so he says that based on his description, it sounds like these were distinct sounds. So maybe there was some sort of firearm involved.
They started returning fire with non-lethal weapon, with a non-lethal. They kept saying non-lethal. They're shooting a shotgun back into the windows, blasting out the windows a little bit.
They were yelling non-lethal, yet he was shooting a gun at them. That doesn't add up. Does it add up for you? Not for me.
And then at that point, they reversed the truck back. They kept trying to yell to him. He sounded like he was trying to say something back, but they were like, look, we can't hear you. You know, please come out. We won't get hurt. And at that point, they reversed back and they changed the angle of the truck, and they were going to try to take out the window, the front window there, tell them to back up from the window. And at that point, they were driving forward to the window, and that's when the whole place went up.
It's a good thing these guys backed up. None of the police officers' lives were taken, and I believe I gotta see here. I did see a note that there may have been some injuries, but it does sound like these officers were away from the home, that's a good thing. I'm glad they were able to get their vehicles back just at the right time before this whole thing went down. Sam in Alexandria is calling in now on line one. Sam, you felt this thing last night?
Well, the reality of it is, you know, hey, I'm a guy, and my senses are like very, very not in tune, other than visual, of course. And my wife, she came out of the bedroom and said, "Did you hear and feel that?" And I'm like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I said, "No." She says, "Really? You didn't?" I says, "No." I said, "What do you think it was?" She says, "I don't know. It just felt like something around the house or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And so I was chatting with a couple of buddies, a couple of Army buddies online on the phone, and then one of them, then I saw the breaking news, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, son of a gun!" And so of course, as Army guys are going, immediately when we saw the level of the explosion or the ferocity of it, we're thinking, okay, now we're doing the analysis, you know, pulling it out our rears what we think it was. You know, well, it wasn't a high explosive because, you know, it didn't have the crack and didn't disintegrate things. It was more of a pushing force. So you can really kind of do initial explosive analysis just by the effects of it. So we kind of surmised that, you know, one of two things, either a gas explosion or maybe a meth type explosion, but certainly not high explosives. But yeah, we are probably at least 8 to 10 miles as the crow flies. And when my wife said she felt it and heard it, and when it was breaking news, you know, within minutes. So that's what she.
Were you both around for the earthquake? What was that? 2014? When did we have the earthquake? That was a while ago now.
That was 2011, and I was underground out at Luray Caverns.
Oh, were you? Did you feel it then?
No. Underground, didn't feel anything. We came up and we started driving home, and that's when it was reported on the news, about the huge Virginia earthquake, and we were like, what the heck was that about?
You missed that one. All right. Well, I'm curious. Yeah. It is funny though, because there were people who were very far away, and I do wonder if women are more attuned to tremors of the earth than the men are. But man, wild. So miles away, 8 miles away, you felt this thing. I did not. Yeah. I was in Alexandria. I didn't feel it, but I instantly started getting texts. Corey texted me immediately, sent me the video. I was looking at it at the same time. We were like, oh boy, what's going on? A big explosion right there in Arlington.
Yeah, that must have been. Yeah, I'm just south of Alexandria on GW Parkway, and so Corey must be more in touch with his feminine side to be able to pick that up.
It's been said before. Thank you very much. I appreciate the call, Sam.
All
right, let's. So this thing goes down last night, and to give you some more here, CNN did report that 3 of the officers had minor injuries. Nobody was hospitalized. So that's the good news in all of this. But we await more answers. Now, this guy's social media history is Looney Tunes. This guy is and you wonder, it's like, what brought him to Arlington? I'd love to know more about this guy's story. And the more we find out that he's like a left-wing lunatic, the less we're going to know about what he was up to. I saw some reports that he had tinfoil on the windows and things. He was like, I don't know what exactly was going on here. Again, his name is James Yu, the suspect. And the website heavy.com has pulled together a bunch of his social media history. They say his LinkedIn page reads the following. You'll find as I read through this, it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world to pin him down ideologically. Hashtag defund FBI, hashtag defund CIA, hashtag defund NSA, purge all, whatever knocks are, purge all spies. He claims to be independent. He says, happy birthday, America. On his social media page, he says, James's YouTube channel, and then like a weird code. It says, U.S. is the world's biggest terrorist, and he's quoting Noam Chomsky, the socialist, in 2015. F the police, quoting Ice Cube with NWA. Purge them, and then he claims to be a former head of global security with CFIUS experience. That would be the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. He claims to be a private landlord with 18 years of property management experience, that he had direct involvement with CFIUS and the National Security Review process, where he successfully led and managed Global Crossing's technical and security team throughout the CFIUS process, resulting in regulatory approval from the United States government for Singapore Technologies Telemedia's purchase of Global Crossing in September of 2003. That would have been a long time ago, 20 years ago. He said he worked in the early 1990s for a company in Crystal City. He supported U.S. military contracts, went to George Mason University. Claims he was in the Honor Society there. Also, he helps with animal adoptions, or he did. That's the claim. He's also expressed anti-white sentiment on his social media account. He was attacking white people, so he's kind of done it all, this guy. He's all over the place, but it sounds like he's kind of a crazy bigot, and that's according to the social media history. And he blew up yesterday. So we'll find out. I guess we'll find out more. But if you're an Arlington resident, that's got to be you've got to be totally freaked out by this. Like that guy, I realize he sounded relatively composed, the witness, but imagine you're like waking up this morning and you're like, oh my God, a house just blew up outside of my house last night. That's got to leave you wondering what the heck's going on. We all are, for sure. Hey, I guess the eyewitness who shot the video of that home blowing up in Arlington yesterday told ARL Now, the Arlington website, that James Yu, the man who lived there, is a recluse. He had aluminum foil covering his windows. After the home was listed for sale a couple of years ago, Yu chased all of the would-be buyers off with a knife. According to, holy cow, real estate records show the home was taken off the market at the end of 2021. This James Yu guy, he's he's got a lot of stuff where he's like attacking white people. He also has expressed pro-Hamas sentiment on social media. There's also that. And he was anti-Trump, and he was a believer of the Rachel Maddow show. I'm just kidding. He didn't. I don't see anything specifically about Rachel Maddow, but he's a believer in the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy theory. So this is a pretty hard. I mean, honestly, other than like defund the FBI, that's about it in terms of like, if you're going to mark something down in the quote right-wing category. Everything else is like left-wing craziness. Everything. Which probably means this is really the end of the road in terms of what we're going to find out about this story. James Yu? Never heard of James who? Never heard of him. Never heard of him. A 56-year-old man firing a flare gun outside of his house, and then the house explodes? What are the circumstances that lead to that? So we'll keep our ear open on that one, our eyes open as well, and see if we can't get you some answers based on, whatever comes out from that. In the meantime, we've got some updates for you coming up on immigration, specifically on our broken, open southern border. You ready for the latest? You remember Griff Jenkins when he was speaking to illegals on the border right as Biden became president? Illegals, the invasion just starts pouring in.
The border closed? Do you believe that the border is closed, or is it open?
It's open, not closed. The border is open.
The border is open. Do you believe that all the migrants believe that the border is open?
Yeah, everybody believes that the border is open. It's open because we enter, we come in, free, no problem.
But it's open for you to come illegally, right?
Illegally, yes, illegally, that's true.
Yes, illegally, that's true. I concede. I'm here illegally thanks to Joe Biden. In fact, Fox reporter Bill Malugin, well, he got another one of these today.
I love you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything, Joe Biden.
Yeah, they're very excited. They love being here. Thank you, Joe Biden, for failing to protect your country. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by Andrew Arthur from the Center for Immigration Studies. He spent the day yesterday talking to members of Congress and their staff. We're going to find out what's happening on Capitol Hill, and are we ever going to get control of this thing? Good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Nick Minnock will be with us from 7 News, WJLA. We get the latest out of Loudoun County. Nick's a good reporter. The Loudoun County officials don't like good reporting. We do. We'll talk to Nick about it. And then Steve Friend is here at 5 o'clock. The FBI whistleblower, senior fellow at the Center for Renewing America. We'll get his reaction to Christopher Wray's answers on Capitol Hill today, testifying before the Senate. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
I love you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything, Joe Biden.
I love you, Joe Biden. He's the one guy in America. He wasn't always in America. He just got here, actually. And he loves Joe Biden for failing to secure the border. That man was interviewed by Bill Malugin of the Fox News Channel, who has been covering this doggedly. And our border just doesn't exist. Our border is wide open, and every foreign national who wants to illegally enter our country on the planet knows it. And they know it's because of Joe Biden. That guy explicitly thanked Joe Biden. For more on this subject, let's talk to Andrew Arthur now. He's a resident fellow in law and policy for the Center for Immigration Studies and a former immigration judge, for that matter. Andrew, good to have you with us, sir.
Thanks so much for having me again, Vince. Greatly appreciate it.
Always nice talking to you. So I understand that you spent some time on Capitol Hill yesterday talking to members of Congress and their staff. What did you find out? What were those conversations like?
Yeah, well, as most people in Washington are probably at least somewhat aware, there is, a current bill that the Biden administration has advanced for funding for Ukraine that is, pending up on Capitol Hill. Republicans in Congress right now, Republicans in the Senate are interested in securing some border security in exchange for that funding. Ukraine funding is not necessarily a 100% winner in the Republican conference. And so in exchange for the funding that the president wants for Ukraine, they actually want the president to do what he's supposed to do and what his DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is supposed to do, and that's secure the border. That's why we have a DHS.
That's right. So Speaker Mike Johnson today said in a letter to the White House the following, quote, supplemental Ukraine funding is dependent upon enactment of transformative change to our nation's border security law. He referenced H.R. 2, the House Republicans' immigration bill, and said that that is the starting point. And no Democrats, of course, supported that, it actually getting our border under control. From your perspective, what are the chances that the White House plays ball here and actually, enforces our border laws?
Well, and that really is the rub in these negotiations, is that while Biden's immigration policies are unpopular with the American people, a recent YouGov poll showed that 62% of voters disapprove of those policies compared to 32% who approve. They're very popular with Democrats. Those numbers are almost completely reversed when it comes to Democrat support for the president's border policies. So the president is going to have to act against the instincts of a lot of people in his own party if he's actually going to respond appropriately to Speaker Johnson, to Minority Leader McConnell on Capitol Hill. But the Republican conference, especially, the staff that I spoke to yesterday, they are 100% behind H.R. 2, which, of course, includes, amongst other things, some asylum fixes, an end to the Biden administration's illegal use of parole, and also mandatory E-Verify, an electronic system that verifies that every person working in the United States is allowed to work in the United States. Most of those things are non-starters for Democrats, and, that's why there is an ongoing negotiation on Capitol Hill about those things. But I can tell you, Vince, that, from the staff that I spoke to, the members that I know, they are, vehement about getting some border security. And right now they've coalesced around H.R. 2. So that's the definition of a Washington impasse. But you and I have been around this town long enough to know that whenever there's an impasse, there starts to be give and take from both sides. So certain things that Democrats don't want, asylum reform, more detention at the border. The biggest problem that we have right now is we're not detaining anybody, which is why people keep coming in. So, it is a negotiation. This is one of those classic Washington situations where both sides want something. Neither side wants what the other side is desiring. So, that's where that negotiation stands. Now, again, this is a pretty significant issue. The president doesn't want to be the person who loses Ukraine because he couldn't negotiate on what's a pretty, common sense issue. But, open immigration, free immigration, illegal immigration has almost become an article of faith for many of those on the Democratic side on Capitol Hill. They're going to have to be disabused of it if they want that money. And I can tell you right now, a lot of people on Capitol Hill on the right are very angry about what's happening at the border and are digging in their heels. And they don't want any more.
We've heard from a lot of these Democrat mayors who seem outraged by the current state of their cities as a result of this invasion. Will those Democrats join forces with Republicans to get something done here, or are they only asking for more money and more amnesty?
Well, it's interesting. When you listen to Eric Adams, who's the mayor of New York, talk about his border issue, he blames that madman down in Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican. But of late, he's actually started to call out the administration about what they're doing. Now, Adams has his own legal problems, as we're all aware. But, and this is a huge question that even many on the left, many, political thinkers on the left, like John Judas and Roy DeShera, who wrote a book, The Coming Democratic Majority, about 20 years ago, are warning Democrats, look, this could be a real vulnerability for you, especially in many of those, New York State seats, in many of those Illinois seats, possibly Pennsylvania, because, of course, there's the Democrats are holding on to a majority in the Senate with a very slim majority. I think it's 2 seats. If they want to, maintain that majority in the next election, they're going to have to make people in West Virginia, Montana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania happy. And many of the people in those states are vehemently unhappy with what's going on at the southwest border right now.
By the way, I should point out the book you just referenced, that book from 2004, The Emerging Democratic Majority, authored by John Judas and Roy DeShera. That was the basis for this, replacement theory stuff from the left. They believed that demographic change, that's what they refer to, basically, the racial change of the country will lead to long-term Democrat victories. That was all spelled out in that book. That's literally the book on the subject. And yet, of course, it's become the source of so much debate. Like it's like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. I don't know. These guys wrote a book about it, didn't they?
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because, Teixeira in particular is looking at the changes that have taken place. And he's saying to Democrats, you're losing many of those voters that Judas and I said were going to be your base. You're losing, Hispanic workers, particularly business owners and blue-collar workers. You're in danger, now not quite as close as they are with Hispanic voters, but with losing black voters in cities. And, again, Vince, you brought up the very important point about, Chicago, New York. Those are places where we've actually seen, that core Democratic base, those black voters who are angry. They're not even, concerned. They're angry about what's going on, about the fact that benefits are being given to people who just arrived here when their own communities are suffering.
Exactly right. So here's why this is so interesting to me that the Democrats can't even get on board with nationwide E-Verify. And this gives away the whole game, doesn't it? Because, they count among their supporters the unions. The unions are supposed to represent American workers. And yet there's no support whatsoever for vetting the immigration status of the people who are coming into all of these firms across the country from these Democrats. So they take all this union money, and then they don't do anything to establish that the jobs are actually going to American citizens. It's a scam.
Yeah, and, it is one of those shocking things. I've been doing this for 30 years. I can remember when amongst the strongest supporters of secure borders were the AFL-CIO. You never hear them talk about this anymore. You never hear any of these big unions, particularly the ones who represent blue-collar workers like SEIU, talk about the need for that. Now, of course, the reason that they're doing that is because they want to unionize those workers once they get any kind of status in the United States. But the whole basis for a union, Vince, is that we limit the access to labor and we get concessions out of business in exchange for that. Right now, people, the fact is rich people benefit from open immigration.
Exactly.
We get almost everything cheaper. It's the poorest Americans, as Barbara Jordan said 25 years ago, who suffer under policies like that. And those are supposed to be the constituents that the Democrats care about. Those are the ones that Judas and Teixeira, said were going to be that core base of Democratic voters in the future. And, the reason that Judas and Teixeira are warning Democrats now is because they've lost their way with respect to those individuals. And it's almost as if we've, traded means-tested public benefits, entitlements, welfare for those people in the inner city, to get them to go away and just ignore what's going on at the border and ignore the fact that, their job prospects and the amount of money they could make if they were working is diminishing.
Right. So an example of all of this is what Bernie Sanders used to say about illegal immigration. Bernie Sanders used to be completely opposed to it because he knew that it came at the expense of American workers. And then when he ran for president against Hillary Clinton, he abandoned all of his old positions. He was like, now he's basically for open borders. Now he's for whatever the Democrats are for when it comes to our border. And it's crazy. So in other words, like the one guy who's supposed to be like, the standout in the Democratic Party, like he's completely different. He only caucuses with them. He's got these really clear views. Even him, he's a total squish on this, and he sold us out.
Yeah, no, it was as recently as 2015 that Bernie Sanders referred to open immigration or massive illegal immigration as a Koch brothers plot.
Yes.
And yet he has completely turned coat on this issue, although, the fact is it wasn't that long ago that Joe Biden was the guy who promoted strong borders and border barriers, walls along the southwest border. In fact, he gave a speech in Winterset, Iowa, when he was running against Barack Obama back in 2008, in which he said, you're not going to like to hear this, but, when we have those strong borders, we stop drugs from coming in and we stop illegal aliens from coming in. And this is the man who right now has to hold his nose to actually spend money that Congress is forcing him to spend to build fencing along the southwest border.
All right. So these members of Congress you were talking with yesterday, their staff, do you get the sense that there's any wins here in the future, or are we still going to continue with this stalemate where the border remains wide open and Democrats won't budge?
Well, I've been a staffer myself. I did it for 8 years. got a lot of bills across the line. And the situation in which we were negotiating those very good bills were very similar to what's going on right now. A sum of money the Democrats want and changes the Republicans want. This is a recipe for success. The question becomes whether or not the Republicans botch it, whether they drop it. And, how many of those Republicans, particularly in the House, from Speaker Johnson down, are willing to accept whatever comes out of those negotiations. That's going to determine, the failure or success of this thing. So, it's fun when you're an observer like you and I are to sit on the side and draw lines in the sand. It's very difficult when you're actually in the marble corridors of the Capitol to, actually bring those things to fruition. So it's a question. Do Republicans want, the touchdown right now? Do they want to get that victory? Many do. Many of the people that I talked to were H.R. 2 or bust. Or are they willing to settle for a modicum of border security and keep plugging away? And again, I'm not saying that either one's right.
Right.
But those are the battle lines that are drawn.
But the sleight of hand the Democrats play here, and it's included in Biden's proposal. Remember, Biden wanted well over $100 billion in foreign aid. He included a $14 billion element that was supposed to address border issues. That $14 billion would be dedicated to accelerating more people into our country, more foreign nationals. That is not a fix. That makes things worse. So when Democrats talk about border security and resolving the challenges at the border, fundamentally what they ultimately mean is amnesty. And certainly in the short term, what they mean is bringing more people in. They think we just need more money for processing foreign nationals into the country rather than securing our border. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And the good news for you and your listeners who, really are tuned into this issue is that the Congress is tuned into it too, the Republicans in Congress. They know that simply, offering more money for more Border Patrol agents or more cameras or whatever isn't going to solve the problem. They understand that this is partially a resource issue, but it's a much, much more a policy issue. They know that the policy is that the White House is following is bad. They know the policy that they need to follow to fix it. And so they're in the right direction. The question becomes, whether they reach their destination and what destination they get to. And, here's how this is going to go, Vince. No matter what comes out of this, we're going to see illegal immigration drop for a period of time. The question is, can they get it to drop for an extended period of time, or will the smugglers get smart, figure out the brand new loopholes, and play those games? And, how much the Republicans in Congress are willing to hold the president's feet to the fire, not just in this negotiation, but in the implementation of whatever comes out. None of these rules that the president is abusing are new. These are things that have been in the law in the case of parole for 70 years.
Right.
But, the president is breaking norms and using these things in those ways. And quite frankly, we've seen what happens when norms get broken in this town.
Yeah.
They're very difficult to fix. Congress comes in if they're not happy and takes it away. But it's also important for your listeners who, keep hoping that somehow the courts are going to make this better. The Supreme Court has said, Congress, the White House, this is your problem. This is not a problem for the courts. This is a problem for you to resolve.
All right. Andrew Arthur from the Center for Immigration Studies, thank you as always for your expertise and your insight today. Thank you, sir. Remember back a couple weeks ago, we found out the news that a number of students have been being hit with fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl poisoning in Loudoun County. The Loudoun County school system slow to alert the parents. Nick Minnock had asked some questions about this of the superintendent, Aaron Spence. Here's how that went.
Yeah, it's nice talking with you. Superintendent Spence, why did it take you so long to notify the public about fentanyl overdoses? Sir, why did it take you so long?
Nick, we're not going to do this tonight. We're not going to have this conversation the way we're having this conversation. We've had a conversation.
When are we going to have the conversation?
Put the camera away. You and I go sit down and have coffee, and we'll talk about your approach to journalism, Nick. Okay? Thanks.
Why did it take you so long to notify the parents about the fentanyl overdoses? You didn't know about the overdoses late September?
We have a constituent.
Yeah, I understand. Why did it take you so long?
She does not want to be on camera. Do you mind?
I'm asking you a question. Why do people want to know?
She does not want to be on camera. Do you mind?
To notify the public about fentanyl overdoses. Sir? Right. Sir, this is life and death.
This would be.
You said you were going to improve communication and transparency. Do you think you succeeded in that?
So, Nick, when you put the camera away, you and I can have a conversation about
yes or no?
Journal.
Yeah, so that's how that went. Meanwhile, that guy has just hired a new woman to work for him. They're going to pay her over $250,000 a year to be the communications director in Loudoun County. Nick Minnock from WJLA, he joins us next right here on the Vince Coglianese Show.